And it was a rumor that Nero himself had started it to make clear more land for his famous Golden House, this enormous palace he built in the heart of Rome. But
we left off with our friend, the late, great JC, who came into the empire at around 0 AD. And obviously, people out there know the story of Jesus Christ, and we'll get into some of that and as it relates specifically to the Roman Empire. But the reason I bring this up is because we had been talking about maybe like 2 hours and 20 minutes into the last episode about the religion of the Roman Empire, and you were explaining how, just to refresh people, about how they were able to spread it in parallels in many ways. Some of their pagan religion across the empire. There was kind of an exception with the Jewish communities, specifically like in the Holy Land and everything. But then you have this young prophet of God come along, Jesus Christ, in the Holy Land, lives for 33 years, and he is put to death by the Roman representative, Pontius Pilate. And after his death, his followers immediately begin to carry on his legacy and create what would become Christianity. So in the context of the history of Christianity within the Roman Empire, when was the first time that, say, Central Rome, I guess like maybe Tiberius or someone like that, was aware that there was this new religious movement happening called Christianity and what it was supposedly about?
So traditionally, we believe that it was in the reign of Nero that Christians first came to the Roman authorities' attention. And that's because of a passage in Tacitus, this Roman historian, who describes the Great Fire of Rome in the year 64. So after the fire, Nero famously scapegoats the Christians, who are this weird new cult that no one knows much about. They, because of a misunderstanding of the Last Supper and the Eucharist, think that the Christians are cannibals. That's one of these rumors about them. They eat the flesh of Christ, and they're also they're like a weird Jewish splinter sect. No one knows much about them. And so,
Jewish splinter sect.
Yeah, and so for that reason, they pinned the blame supposedly on the Christians of Rome. We don't know much about this persecution. We only have this one source for it. Historians kind of debate how extensive it was. But supposedly, Nero rounds up a number of Christians and puts them to death pretty brutally in the arena. They're torn apart by dogs. They're made into torches and burned at his parties.
And this is in 64 AD?
In 64 and just after.
So 31 years after
Jesus died. Supposedly. There's debate about that. He's probably born in 4 BC, so he puts his death. Anyway, so sometime around there. And supposedly also the apostles, both Peter and Paul, are martyred in Rome about the same time by Nero. So supposedly the apostle, and again, this is all later stories. We don't know if it happened or not. But the story is that the apostle Peter is crucified upside down in the Circus of Nero, beneath where the Vatican is later built. And that's why it happens there, because then they bury him right outside the Circus of Nero, where he was crucified or assassinated, or killed in some way. And it's around his tomb that the St. Peter's Basilica is constructed. There is in the 2nd century, the Christians of Rome built a little shrine right over what's believed to be his tomb. And that becomes the center of Constantine's Basilica, the first St. Peter's Basilica, which is then torn down and replaced by the current one during the Renaissance.
Oh, wow. It was that later when they started to build that.
Yeah, not until Pope Julius II in the early 16th century did they start.
When did the Vatican become a thing?
Like
not necessarily
an
a country? Not necessarily an independent country, but as this is the Vatican area.
So it existed in the Roman period, but it was a bunch of mosquito-ridden vineyards and clay pits. It was a suburb of Rome that no one wanted to live in. Made terrible wine, apparently, from the vineyards there. It only became important because of this cemetery. There was a road that went through it next to this Circus of Nero. And between that road and the circus is where this cemetery grew up, among which was this memorial to the Apostle Peter. And that, after Constantine becomes the first Christian emperor, it had already been a pilgrimage site, but he decides to make this the centerpiece of his signature church. And, undertakes a massive building project that levels half the cemetery, buries the rest. Right? You can still see it below the Vatican. You can tour the old Roman cemetery.
Wow.
And then builds this big basilica on top of it, which remains Western Christianity's most important church for 11 centuries until it's torn down by the Renaissance popes and replaced by the current one.
Fascinating. Okay, back to the beginning, though, with Nero's fire in
Yes,
64.
so that's the first time we think that Christians have come to the notice of the Roman authorities.
What happened with the fire? Was that like it spread all across the city of Rome and burned? Like, what was the damage there?
Enormous. Supposedly about 3/4 of Rome is destroyed by this fire, and hundreds of deaths. Massive tracts of the city are reduced to smoldering rubble. And it was a rumor that Nero himself had started it to clear more land for his famous Golden House, this enormous palace he built in the heart of Rome. But that's probably rumors too. And Nero, however, was aware of the rumors, and he responded to them by actually doing some pretty good disaster relief. He set up temporary tents for the people who were dispossessed. He allowed them to use the palace gardens, gave them food and water. But to curtail these rumors, he apparently tried to pin blame on the Christians.
Yeah, never let a good crisis go to waste.
Exactly, right?
Yeah,
scapegoats, use them.
Les, do we have the 64 fire pulled up? I just want to literally pull up the Wikipedia page on that just to get some...
There are some great old paintings that show, flames behind imposing monuments, and then Nero looking surly. And
75%, though.
That's just a guesstimate. So I think it's 11 of Rome's 14 regions are badly damaged. This will probably tell you this.
Right.
Oh, 10, sorry. 10 of the 14 districts.
So the Great Fire of Rome began on the 18th of July, 64 AD. The fire began in the merchant shops around Rome's Chariot Stadium, Circus Maximus. We're going to come back to Circus Maximus.
Yes.
After 6 days, the fire was brought under... 6 days? Oh, my God. The fire was brought under control, but before the damage could be assessed, the fire reignited and burned for another 3 days. In the aftermath of the fire, 71% of Rome had been destroyed. I think we just lost H. There it is. Had been destroyed 10 out of 14 districts. According to Tacitus and later Christian tradition, Emperor Nero blamed the devastation on the Christian community in the city, initiating the empire's first persecution against the Christians. Other contemporary historians blame Nero's incompetence, but it is commonly agreed by historians now that Rome was so tightly packed, a fire was inevitable. So let's go down to the Christian section where he blames it on the Christians. I'm going to guess that's in the aftermath, right? No. Oh, yeah. Okay, go back up. So Christians blamed by Nero for the fire were identified, arrested, and killed. Some for the entertainment of spectators were torn to pieces by hunting dogs. Others were crucified in ways calculated to make them look ridiculous. According to St. Jerome, shout out St. Jerome, never heard of him. The total number of Christians martyred by Nero was 979. That was going to be my question, how many? So if this is roughly 30, 40 years after Christ's death, I'm trying to think how big that community could even be.
Probably very small.
Yeah.
So it spread initially, Christianity, through Jewish communities. There were Jews in all of the empire's great cities at this point. Often they were settled as merchants initially, but there were at least a dozen synagogues in Rome by the 1st century. There were Jewish catacombs, actually, just for Jews in Rome. Every Alexandria was probably about a third Jewish.
A third?
Yeah, a huge number.
Shout out to the Jews, spreading out, baby.
The diaspora.
That's what you got to do.
Before it was a thing.
Yeah.
So it was through these, like the Apostle Paul, for example. He preached to these communities primarily, and it was through them that Christianity first took root. But so in Rome, we're probably talking a community that's in the hundreds. There's no way that 979 were killed. That would have been the entire church, and probably more than the entire church in Rome. That's a later estimate. We don't know. But even through the 2nd century, you're talking a few 100,000 Christians in the whole world, in the whole empire. That's it. It's only with the conversion of Constantine that the numbers really begin to grow. So at the moment that Constantine converts to Christianity in the early 4th century, probably 10 or 15% of the empire is Christian. That's it. It's a pretty small minority.
But hold on a minute. You're talking about the Council of Nicaea, I believe 313, is that right? Or 333?
Well, that's the Edict of Milan is 313. Edict of Nicaea is 325.
Okay,
same period.
That's right. So 10 to 15% though we saw the map.
It's a big empire.
That's a big. So they're represented by a nice number at that point. So over those 300 years, that the word of JC, it's spread. Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here